and our staff accountant, Zane Martin. They're going to help me moderate this particular public hearing, which is for our property tax rates. The city recently received the property assessments from the Property Valuation Administrator's Office for the January 1, 2020 calendar year. And we've completed our computations and we put together a presentation and are ready to recommend the 2020 tax rates for both real estate and personal property. A proposed tax rate for real estate, which is set between the compensating rate and a 4% growth rate, requires a public hearing. Hence, this is why we are here today. The notice of this particular virtual public hearing was published in the Daily News on August 14th and August 19th, as required by state statute, and was also advertised by the city's social media. Another new element this year for our public hearing is that we are offering a written comment period. And that comment period, the deadline to submit written comments either by US mail, email, or fax is 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, August 27th, 2020. So that would be tomorrow. Since this presentation is being done virtually, I do ask that you hold your questions and comments to the end, and at which point we'll have an opportunity where you can raise your hand and we can unmute you and then allow you to ask your questions or make your comments. If everyone's ready, we'll go ahead and get started. So the total assessed value of real estate for the city limits for the calendar year 2020 is nearly 5.8 billion, and that's billion with a B, which is a 6.5% growth rate or $353.3 million over the previous year. Existing real estate assessment grew by 1.8%, which was just over $98.7 million. And new property assessments for 2020 adds another 4.7%, or just under $254.6 million over the 2019 values. So before we can set an actual tax rate, each local government is required to calculate a compensating tax rate. So this is the worksheet basically that represents that calculation. And a compensating tax rate is essentially a no growth revenue. So we would set a rate where we would equal the amount of revenue that we could have received in 2019. And in 2019, our property tax rate was 20.5 cents. And that amount could have produced approximately $11.1 million in potential revenues. So you can see that, and I don't know if you'll be able to see my pointer, but that is the 11.1 million here identified as letter A on the worksheet. However, actual collections only produced just under $10.5 million or 94% collection rate. So our actual 2019 collections, we could have received 11.1 million. However, we only received 10.5 million. And in part, that's because when we set these tax rates and we estimate these revenues, we don't always know what exonerations are going to be applied, what exemptions are going to be applied during that calendar year. So currently, we don't know what those are going to be for 2020. And of course, we cannot guarantee 100% collection rate either. One thing to note is that for residents that are 65 years or older, the homestead exemption is $39,300. That rate is set, it was set for 2019 and 2020. It is the same amount for both last year and this year at $39,300. And state law provides that the homestead exemption shall be adjusted for inflation every 2 years. And the Kentucky Office of Property Valuation Administration determines this amount. So the last time it was set, which would have been for 2017 and 2018, it was $37,600. So it was a 4.5% increase for the 2019 and 2020 years. So we are currently working under the $39,300 exoneration amount, homestead exemption amount, excuse me. And so that rate will not change again until 2021. So our compensating rate, which is identified on this sheet, would have been 20.1 cents, which is the letter I at the bottom. Again, if we were to just try to collect as much as we collected in the previous year. Now, this particular calculation is if we were to consider a 4% rate increase. We are allowed up to a 4% rate increase by statute, and we can do that without it being subject to recall. So anything over a 4% rate could be subject to recall. We do this calculation really as a matter of determining where our particular rate falls. And so you can see that a rate of 20.9 cents right here, and here's what is identified if we were to use were to use the 4% growth rate, and that would produce approximately $12.1 million in potential revenues, again, before we know of any new homestead exemptions or any other exonerations are applied. And then considering a 94% collection rate, which is about our average, would be about $11.4 million. So the current tax rate is 20.5 cents, and that could produce 11.8 million in potential revenue. However, considering a 94% collection rate, we're probably going to collect somewhere closer to 11.1 million. And again, our 2019 tax rate was 20.5 cents. Our compensating rate would be 20.1, a 4% growth rate would be 20.9, and the proposed tax rate this year is 20.5. So we're not recommending a change in the tax rate, but it does fall between the compensating rate and the 4% growth rate. We did budget for FY21. We budgeted $10,925,000 for real property tax revenues. We consider that to be a conservative estimate, and that budget figure is 7.1% increase over the 2020 budgeted amount, which was 10.2 million, and 4.4% increase over the actual 2020 collections, which was 10,460,000. Since it's been previously discussed by the Board of Commissioners that the city would continue to live on the growth of in assessed values without raising the tax rate for as long as financially responsible, I am recommending that we maintain the 20.5 cent tax rate for the 2020 tax year. So it's the same as 2019. And this is 20.5 cents per $100 of assessed value. So if you have a $100,000 assessed value, you would then have a property tax rate or a property tax payment amount of $205. This is a 10-year history or so of our real estate property growth and the tax rates set for each of those years. And you can see that the tax rate has remained the same for the last several years, from 2008 through 2017, where in 2018 we actually reduced the rate to the current rate because that particular year our existing growth exceeded 4%. And that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, obviously that's when we have to reconsider our tax rate amount and or have the opportunity to look at that further. Both of the Bowling Green proposed 2020 tax rates for the real property and personal property fall below the average 2019 rates for Kentucky cities, counties, and school districts. And I got that information off of the Department of Kentucky Revenue PVA document that they published. And the city's personal property tax rate has remained unchanged since 1980, when it was lowered from 30 cents. So we're recommending 26 cents for the personal property tax rate, and that has remained the same since 1980. For the City of Bowling Green's fiscal year 2021 annual operating budget, total taxes represents 19.1% of the all revenues budget at approximately 21.1 million, and 26.5% or almost 17.8 million of the general fund revenues. Now, obviously, total taxes includes real estate, which is the largest category of that at 61.5% of the general fund revenues, but also includes personal property tax, insurance premiums, bank franchise, the telecommunications franchise, the Lovers Lane bond distribution, and then penalty and interest on property taxes. The all other revenues, which is general fund plus revenues that are collected outside of the general fund, would include transient room tax and then our natural gas franchise. So this chart reflects how Bowling Green's 2020 proposed tax rates compare to the 2019 tax rates that were set for our other local entities in the state. The 2020 tax rates are not yet available for the school districts or for Warren County. And I don't believe the Commonwealth of Kentucky has put out any other rates either at this point in time. So I can only compare to what I have available to me to reference. And right now that's the 2019 rate. But as you can see, 20.5 cents is certainly less in most of these categories. And the same thing with the 26 cents on the personal property. So as I wrap up the presentation, I'd like to provide some additional general information. So persons that own property in the city of Bowling Green will pay taxes to both the city and to Warren County. City invoices will include the Bowling Green Independent School District taxes due for those who own property within that district. And the city does not set that tax rate. We simply collect it on behalf of the school district. City taxes will be due December 31st, 2020. That is a Thursday this year. It falls on a Thursday. And there's a 10% penalty that will be applied to all invoices not paid or postmarked by December 31st. We do have an overnight drop box outside of the City Hall Annex, and payments can also be made online at www.bgky.org. One benefit this year is that city offices will be closed on January 1st, which is a Friday. And that automatically means there's a built-in 3-day grace period. So as long as your property tax has been either dropped off in our drop box by that upcoming Monday morning, I believe that'll be January 4th, then you should not be hit with a penalty or interest. But you must have your payment here before 7:30 that morning. Payments can also be made in person, as I mentioned, by mail or submitted online. The tax invoices will be similar in format as in past years. It's a single sheet, 8.5 by 11, with a tear sheet of remittance at the bottom. And is there a return envelope provided? Okay, no, there is no return envelope, so you will have to mail that. We estimate mailing approximately 23,000 invoices this year, and we normally have about 1,000 invoices that get returned to us based on an address change. So our Treasury staff will attempt to locate the correct address and then remail that invoice to the appropriate address. However, we encourage property owners to contact us directly, let us know if there has been an address change, and to also contact the Warren County PVA's office to permanently update their address on record with them. We expect to have tax invoices mailed out in October. Even if a tax invoice is not received, you are still required to pay the amount owed by the deadline. So property owners are not excused of any of their responsibility to pay the property tax or from any of the penalties and interest that could be applied. Persons with mortgage escrow accounts that are already set up, their taxes should be paid by their mortgage companies, but the individual should also receive the invoice, and then we will send the information to the mortgage companies as well if requested. And then if a property owner has not received their city tax invoice by November 1st, to please contact the city's treasury office. Now, certainly we are a little bit behind due to COVID, so I'm hoping that we can still get our invoices out before November. But I'm certain that the media and also we'll make sure that the public knows when we plan to get those mailed out so that you'll have a better feel for timing on that information. And then, as I mentioned previously, we are allowing a written comment period this year, and that comment period ends tomorrow at 4:30 in the afternoon. You can send in a comment by mail. You can email it to us at our revenue@bgky.org account, or you can fax it to us, but it has to be written. It has to be a written comment. We won't be able to take those comments just by phone. And now I'd like to open the floor for any comments or questions.
If a customer would like a receipt with their payment that they mail in, they can send a self-addressed stamped envelope with their payment and a receipt will be mailed back to them.
Okay. Thank you, Sean. Does anyone have any questions?
Please use the raise hand button on the...
Yeah, you can use the raised hand button that's on your screen. I believe it's on the bottom, or just raise your hand. Any questions? Any comments? Mayor, Commissioner Perigin, Commissioner Beasley Brown, any comments or questions? Okay. Well, with none at this time, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing. I again appreciate and thank you all for participating and being a part of this process. We will have a property tax ordinance on the September 1st Board of Commissioners agenda for first reading. So that will be next Tuesday.
Sue has raised her hand.
Okay, Commissioner Perigin.
Have to unmute her mic. There she goes.
Can you unmute?
Looks like it's unmuted.
Commissioner Perigin, do you have a comment?
I have to lower the hand first for them to talk.
You might. Okay, now try.
Please do it again. Try one more time, Sue.
Okay, we've lost Sue. Okay. Anybody else with any questions or comments? Okay, well, I thank you all again for your participation. I know most of the people on this call are city staff members. So again, thank you very much for participating and giving us a few ears to listen and watch our presentation. A few ears and eyes, I guess I should say.